the first event in North America this summer was a day, a rather curious day in Ottawa, where I taught several lessons at Janice Gray's place. Janice Gray is an Ottawa pianist who hosts me when things are too small to do an actual institute there. And one of the pianists shows up, and she's got this certificate that she just played Horowitz's Steinway. So what? Horowitz's Steinway is at the Ottawa Steinway Gallery. So I'm supposed to drive to Northampton, Massachusetts that night in order to start an institute the next day in Amherst, Massachusetts. And I thought, well, you know, we can be an hour late, so I dropped by the Steinway Gallery and played Horowitz's Steinway.
Did you get a certificate?
I did get a certificate. The bad news is that the piano is not in good shape at all. They haven't kept up, the action is not regulated well. I mean, it's still regulated very fine, but it doesn't sound like Horowitz's Steinway anymore. It sounds like a very good Steinway, but it lost that magic sound that it had last time I played it with Misha several years ago. So that was kind of interesting experience, because I was doing this and that to it to try and find that heart, that amazing burnished glow, that individuality of the voices, and it was just all gone. And the girl who played after me, she was, you know, she had pretty good fingers, and she was playing with, I think she was playing Kachurian toccata or something, and she got a certain bite out of it that was slightly reminiscent of that instrument. But basically, if the technicians do not keep the instrument up, then it does not work the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It was definitely the same instrument. I found Misha's signature on the underneath, and Kemal's signature on the underneath.
Wait, signature underneath?
The underneath of that piano now is completely disfigured. Hundreds of people, everybody who played the piano in concert, every pianist gets a big felt pen and signs their name on the bottom of it. I mean,
that's so silly.
You know, Steinway is so tacky in some ways. It's unbelievable. That was the first thing. So I drove to, I think I got in around 2 in the morning in the end, and started this institute at Amherst the next day. And that, and the University of Massachusetts, it's called Byzantin Hall, and they have a Steinway. One of their 2 Steinway Ds is from the concert department, so it's actually, it does not have a normal serial number. It's just called CD113. And this was a way better instrument than the Horowitz Steinway in its present state. Really wonderful instrument. The second Steinway D was also excellent, and the hall is excellent, and the people there are so welcoming. It's our first time giving the institute at University of Massachusetts in Amherst, just down the road from where Moshe Feldenkrais did his last North American training, and also just down the road from where Dorothy Taubman held her institute for many, many years. So this is a place that's full of history. And the institute ended up being amazing, because a Washington pianist named Marjorie Lee, who was really something, she's a very fine pianist. I forget whether she won the William Capel competition or did well in it, or second prize. Anyway, she's a really accomplished pianist, and an amazingly hard worker in terms of developing her teaching practice. She has brought literally dozens of students through her system and sent them off to Juilliard and Curtis and Peabody and all the other big schools. And she not only came to work with me, because she's been using my ideas for years, has read all my books, and makes her students read my books, but she brought several of her students with her as well. So, and they all played really well. Like we're playing, young kids, like 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds working on big repertoire, Chopin scherzi and Chopin etudes and big sonatas and all sorts of stuff. It was just it was a wild and crazy time, and they responded extremely well, because of course, you know, no matter how well somebody plays, normally I can find something. Okay, look, you play great, but what about this dimension here? What about this sound here? What about this way your hands? there's always something. There's no limit to improvement, as Moshe Feldenkrais says. No limit to improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it was the biggest, from my perspective over here, we had like a bunch of videos, but it seemed like it was the biggest institute ever.
I think it was right up there. I think in 2011 or 2012 in Northampton was 11 participants every day.
Wow.
So that might have been bigger than this one, but this one was like I was working from dawn to dark. And it was just a totally exciting time. And Marjorie is talking about inviting me to the Washington area, somehow getting some sort of activity going there, which would be very exciting. But I was so excited to meet her and work with her and her gang. It was really a charge.
Cool.
So I think you've made some of those lessons available to the pianotechnique.org community, right?
Yeah, I'm just publishing, like, mostly right now I'm publishing lectures.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing larger and warmer sound lecture and anti-gravity and biointegrity one, and that's going up.
That was Amherst, and then after that I went up to Concord. I drove up through this beautiful evening through the New England woods, the sun going down. It was really magical. In my Volkswagen Silver Beetle, which is now history. I sold it.
Sold it?
Yeah, I sold it. Anyway, yeah, it was too much to keep it up and keep it stored all winter in Montreal.
Of course, yeah.
So Concord was a much smaller institute, a very congenial group. We had this pianist, this lady from the coast, and the last day she comes in and there's a microphone next to the piano for her lesson. What's this? And she sits down and starts to sing Cole Porter. And she sang, Burt Bacharach. Yeah, she's in a group that does a Bacharach review. And of course, Burt Bacharach's a McGill University graduate, so he's we're from the same alma mater. And she sang great. So we ended up having this double lesson. Piano and voice and posture all kind of just whammed together, and we both got a real charge out of it. She sort of did it on a whim, and that was really something. So
I'm looking. That's Christine P.
In Petrucci or something like that. Yeah. She was a live number. She was really great. We had a lot of fun.
Cool.
And a very fine teacher, and also, Marjorie, she brings these kids along. I have to admit, I'm not like the be-all and end-all of piano teachers, because I don't know how to bring people along. I don't know how to start with a young kid, and by the time they're age 10 or 12, they're playing Chopin etudes. I do not know how to do that. And I rely on the people who come to me. And there are people who come to me who do know how to do that. And maybe they can do it better with some of the tools I'm offering, but the idea is that they do that even better. And it's not that I'm going to make them teach differently or somehow.
You know how to do it in Serbia in elementary schools. They start you off with Czerny, like School of Velocity.
Yeah. Look, I know all that. I'm not interested. Yeah, I don't even want to hear about it. Like.
And then once you're done with Moshkovsky, then you can.
No, I know it works. I know it's fantastic, but like I don't know how to do that. Like I'm a complete inept with that. But I know how to help people who do that well. Add some tools to the toolbox, which may be even better, give even better results. This was the case with Marjorie. But the thing is, and also I've been reading Malcolm Gladwell. I'm now reading David and Goliath, which is his 5th book. I've sort of ripped through the previous 4 books over the past half year or a year or so, I forget. And I think he's brilliant, and I'm really learning a lot from him. But one of the things that he talks about is stickiness factor in the tipping point. He says you can have brilliant material, but if it's not sticky, that is, if people don't latch onto it somehow, then it may remain relatively ineffective or relatively unknown. And this got me thinking that I think that my material, although I do perhaps think highly of my own material, I do think it is lacking in the stickiness department. So in my work with people like Marjorie and with Christine, who's running her own music school on the coast and doing very well, is that they're translating what I'm doing into terminology and ways of working with kids and with young students that increases the stickiness factor. And I'm hoping that this gets back to me so that it can perhaps influence how I'm presenting my own material.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is
I mean, you put out Kittycraft as well. Like
yeah, well, Kittycraft is a first attempt.
2 months ago.
Kittycraft is a first attempt, and I would say that this is like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's possible. And Kittycraft is just actually something to get the ball rolling. And what I envision is a conversation where I'm hoping to involve more and more teachers and pianists, and to enrich this conversation to the point where we get something which is a really effective curriculum, an effective body of approaches that is going to empower the piano pedagogy world even more.
For sure. I mean, I think I just, like, a few days ago I got a question on this Q&A section on the site, and it was about Kittycraft. I'll look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was about Kittycraft or somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. We're looking forward to getting more of those, of course. But yeah.
Yeah, but like as I said, Kittycraft is just a starting point, and what I'm really interested in at this point in time is questions about people who tried to, let's say, use what was one of my ideas with a young student, and blah blah blah, this happened, or this thing good happened, or this thing bad happened.
Okay.
And is there some other way of formulating this particular idea so that this young kid can just get it and go? Because kids don't like to screw around and mess around with analytical sort of mindset too much. They like to be able to do stuff. Yeah. Between Concord and Salt Lake City was Montreal, my personal the Tai Chi intensive weekend, which I do every year with Sam Slutsky. Now this was, not a piano institute, but it was very important to me because I don't know, people can't really know this because they don't know Sam, but people don't know how much of my teaching is influenced by Sam, and how often in a lesson I'll be saying something and it's like Sam's voice and Sam's words and Sam's intonation coming out of my mouth. Because his way of teaching alignments and his way of teaching the art of movement in the Tai Chi martial arts perspective is brilliant. And he's on a roll. We had a group, people coming from all over North America to this workshop in Montreal, which happens once a year. And Sam was really on, and we had a good group of intensely working people. So there was kind of a breakthrough. It's hard to explain how those breakthroughs bleed into what I'm doing, but in Salt Lake City, I would say that my teaching did undergo a shift because of what we were doing with the Tai Chi form in Sam's workshop. So that week in Montreal is very important for me, and of course it's nice to be back in my old neighborhood. I grew up in Montreal West, but lived in my student years in the part of Montreal which is quite Jewish, quite Greek, quite Jewish, Hasidic Jew, and there's still Hasidim all over the place, and it's kind of nice. Like, you feel you're in Eastern Europe, and you don't even have to get on a plane. And oh, wait a minute, I live in Eastern Europe.
You do it.
That's where I am now. I have to go to Montreal to feel like I'm in Eastern Europe. Dude, you are in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, pretty much.
Coming to you from Serbia, Belgrade, Serbia. Well, okay.
Southeastern, but still very much Eastern.
That's right. Anyway, the irony of it all. So Salt Lake City, again, not that big an institute, but a very good institute. What was special about it? Naila Ledesma, who organizes the Salt Lake City Institute for me, is a Suzuki teacher. She told me this year, like, she's a grandmother, like, 10 times over. Like, I had no idea that, you know, she was so far on, and she's the most curious and inquisitive and persistent student I have, I think.
Cool.
And she always asks the opposite question. So she's bringing these little, simple little Suzuki things to me and saying, how do I do this with the kids and everything. And Suzuki, of course, they move the fingers very well. So it's really different from the whole arm wave school. But there are certain other limitations. And so we're trying not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but just, and of course the thumb, individuating the thumb is always a big thing. This year she brought more advanced pieces to me, some granados and stuff, and I'm just impressed at how somebody can grow and develop at any point in their lives, and all it takes is the desire and the curiosity. So that was a real highlight of the. And we had a new. Well, I'm bad on names. We had a new pianist coming from Denver. No?
Oh, you got
Iowa?
Allison B.
Yeah, Allison
W,
B.
Brianne, Brian.
Yeah. Allison B. was the new one, who's a very talented pianist, very good teacher, and very, very, again, this willingness. You see, we've spoken about this before, that I tend to get a sort of a low rate of return on my institutes. And I think one of the reasons is that it's difficult to follow my teaching. I know myself because I am trying to follow my teaching and I find it difficult. And I, especially as you know, I'm getting older, I'm 62, and when I go to the piano now, it's like the old habits are more present, and the way to overcome them is clearer, but it's also more complex. It's not getting easier for me. And perhaps because I've had so many experiences teaching where I see more clearly how to go further, that maybe now the goal for me is much further away from where my old habits are. So maybe that's why it's becoming more difficult for me to make progress and to play the way I want. So I completely understand anybody else who's in the same boat. You know, they come to me, we work well together, and there's something about it which is just overwhelming or confronting.
It could
or
be, yeah, but there's this whole musicianship aspect which is absolutely amazing to me. Like what you can offer, you know, not only from like not only in terms of technique, but like musicianship.
Yeah, but that can be problematic as too, because everybody has their signature. Everybody has their way of phrasing, their way of, and you can't just walk in and change that. And so to offer something where we take a person's signature and we enhance it and make it easier for that signature to flourish, that's what I'm looking for. But sometimes, sometimes it looks like, oh, you have to sacrifice this to get that, and then you get into these problems. Yeah. So, you know, it's because of the nature of this work. This is not. I'm not just spewing back the standard lines about piano technique. I'm really, you know, and that's why I feel every institute is it's a think tank and it's a mutual exploration. And I say this every time, but it's becoming more and more evident. And this year, the North American institutes were exceptional in that regard. So, you know, but there's an inherent difficulty. You know, you don't just go and you know, oh, you may play a little louder here, and it's really a little arch. There's really something that's confronting in the whole nature of our work. So I'm blown away to the extent which people meet that challenge and are willing to go somewhere new and to feel uncomfortable, and then to find a deeper version of their musical selves.
Well, you can definitely take a person there. Like if a person has a good idea of how they want to play in terms of like technique or music, you can definitely, you're absolutely able to take them there. There's no question about that. So
Yeah, well, it's just it's a, again, Feldenkrais says there's no limit to improvement, and so I think there's no limit to improvement in terms of my teaching. Like I'm always working on that. I'm always like there's an interface with the person I'm working with, which is amazing. And then okay, so how do you? It's sort of like how do you walk into somebody's soul without stepping on their toes? I mean, it's very intimate in a way because you're dealing with how this person creates. It's not just like, oh, you have to move your fingers a little better. It gets very, very personal.
No, absolutely. I mean, trust me, I've worked with you for years, but then I watched all these videos and I noticed all these things, how you approach people, and it's really masterful. Like, you really know how to do it. So, that's great.
Well, I'm sensitive to the issue. Basically, I'm sensitive to the issue, and and I'm really sort of honored and excited at how far we're getting in that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after Salt Lake City, I went to Prince Edward Island. I played a couple of concerts where actually my daughter Masha and my significant other Audrey Dumont, actually they played almost as much music as I did. I played the Schumann Fantasy and the Chopin Fourth Ballade. Masha played a whole bunch of stuff. Audrey played a Bach Chromatic Fantasy and Fugue, which is a completely wild piece. And the Lark by Glinka, which in arrangement by Balakir, which is just a gem, a really special moment. So these are special concerts because it's Canada's 150th birthday. That's why you see these things here. If you'll go to CanadianBiographies.com or .ca, there's a biography of one George Coles, first Premier of Prince Edward Island and my great-great-great-grandfather, who wore sideburns very much like these. And he is one of the founding fathers of our country. He's a father of Confederation. So in Charlottetown, I was in the family church playing, and it's a church that Coles attended, and there's a window dedicated to his daughter and a plaque dedicated to his granddaughter, and another plaque dedicated to his great-granddaughter, and then, oh, there's his great-great-granddaughter and her sister sitting in the front row. And then there was me, and then there was my daughter, and then my cousin David de Blois, his two kids, so there were 4 generations of alive Coleses in the church. And anyway, I came out with a top hat and said, "Hi, I'm George Coles." Introduced myself as that, and then did the whole rigmarole. It was a lot of fun. So Charlottetown is the cradle of Confederation, but of course Annapolis Royal in Nova Scotia is the cradle of Canada, because at Annapolis Royal there's the settlement of Port Royal, which was the first European settlement in North America. So, or in Canada. No, I guess in Canada. I guess there had been stuff done in the States already.
Yeah.
1608, anyway. Samuel de Champlain, 1608. So I played 2 recitals with my assistants in the cradle of Canada and the cradle of Confederation. The cities in Eastern Canada most significantly linked to our history. So it was special in that regard. And I remember saying that the Schumann Fantasy, it's all about Schumann's being separated from Clara and his longing and his tempestuousness and the father saying, "No, you shall not be together," and the fight and the struggle, and then the victory in the end. And I sort of felt that our early settlers in North America probably, these emotions, they had the same kind of struggle and intense emotional life just to survive. So I thought the fantasy somehow did reflect something of the experience of our forefathers. So that was my time in Canada, and then we flew to Split in Croatia and had 2 weeks again, small institutes, but again, really fruitful institutes, where I started, because we were such a small group, I was giving a lecture, and then I said on the thumb or something, I said, look, why doesn't everybody just come and sit at the pianos? Because there were enough pianos and enough people that we could just put everybody at the piano. And the lecture ended up being hands-on at the piano, kind of a lecture, lesson, demonstration experience where everybody got to try out the exercise I was doing and to see how it worked in repertoire situations, and I would just work with each person in turn. And those lectures ended up being tremendously productive. So I'm looking at trying to develop that format for future lectures, even if I have more than a few people in an institute. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's a new innovation, which I'm very happy with. And we created a whole new series of exercises for the thumb, I think, which is going to go in my next book.
Got the thumb integrated into the hand, thumb rotation, rolling to lie down, pianistic cardinal directions. Yeah, it's a whole new set of lectures, actually.
Yeah, the one of the lectures, I forget, but somebody asked me a question. I think it was Taija Englund, who runs a music school in Finland, and she asked me a question, and in answering it, we just got a whole new set of exercises. It was this rolling exercise actually for the thumb, but like we did all sorts of new variations, and we just took it a lot further. And so that series is going to be in my next book. So it's always interactive, and the apposite question from you is what pushes me to develop this idea of structure and function into new realms, into new
super cool
areas.
I'm going to publish all of those into respective series.
Yeah, cool. And of course in Split we were working alongside Kemal, who was running his summer school in the other school, so there was a lot of overlap. We were watching each other's lessons. Unfortunately, I had to leave. He played a recital in Split a few days ago, which just blew everybody away. It was the Bach and Liszt program again, but he says he's finding all sorts of new stuff in there.
Cool.
He said he played that program in Denver, Colorado, just after I had been in Salt Lake City, actually, and they just screamed. He said he's never heard the only time he's ever heard an audience erupt like that after a performance is when Volodya used to play. So again, he's discovered more extreme voicings and greater characterizations of the emotions that are in there. That's making that music take off to even new places. So that was Split, and now I'm back here. I've just been on a week-long meditation retreat, and well, it's I guess that's one of the reasons I talk so much about the difficulty of confronting the real nature of the problem, because in the meditation week that's what happened, and so it's I'm more aware now of it's not easy to really face these questions and to address them seriously. So much easier just to rest on your laurels and learn your pieces and play the way you were taught to. And it's not at all. It's a real struggle to take the thing further and to dig in and to look for something which is going to communicate more to an audience.
For sure, yeah. Are you doing the Gurdjieff work on those meditation sessions? Yeah. Cool.
Anyway, so if anybody is interested, we've got virtually no participants for Overvane, which is September 8th to 10th. It's in a little more than a week's time. Yeah, so I would love to see a few more people there. One, to try out these ideas that I've been talking about, and then Paris, where we've got a pretty big group in Paris, September 21 to 27, but there are still places. there are still places, although it's a big group. And then Montreal, France in November, we also have a pretty big group, but there are still several places. And Wussum, of course, in Germany, if you want to register for that one, then you go to the Halle
And
Schelle.
is this information already up on the site?
Oh yeah, all these things are online, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
we'll put the link in.
I just got an email
description,
from Matt Rubenstein. He's my contact in Berlin. And I thought Matt and we were looking at Berlin in February 2018, but now he just sent an email something about November 2017. So if we get that institute set up, we'll certainly let you know as soon as possible.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Great.
So I'm wondering what else is there to talk about. The fourth book, Playing the Piano with Whole Self, is now at Oxford University Press, in it being reviewed in its final
you can
form.
tell. Now you can reveal.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's already in the final review process. So.
Cool. Yeah.
So that should be well. They're pretty rigorous in their preparations. So I'm hoping by the end of the year, but we'll see.
Cool. Great. Yeah. Great.
There's an article, there's a sample chapter from that book coming out in this month's EPTA journal in Netherlands. EPTA Netherlands has their own journal, and the chapter 1, or actually it's now chapter 2 actually, the lesson with Carlo on biotensegrity and hand structure, that's in this month's EPTA Netherlands journal. And I'm preparing an article on Feldenkrais method and creative practice, which will be in an upcoming book by the same name. So I'm again in the midst of trying to formulate these ideas in a logical progression that's going to be clear for that audience. Apart from that,
That's pretty good.
I'm looking at a new few pieces for my own repertoire, and onward and upward.
Yeah. What are you working on right now? What are you?
Bach, Busoni, Toccata, Adagio, and Fugue in C major.
Nice.
Which it turns out is incredibly difficult. It's like, oh no, it's really difficult, but it's great. It's just I love the piece. It's too much not to, to reach the end of my life and have not been able to say that I played it.
Yeah.